Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. If you guys joined me this past Wednesday, we had our prayer vigil online and it was very, very powerful. If you missed that, I encourage you to go watch that. We had key people join us for that one, and we covered our nation. We covered Minnesota. We covered ICE agents. We covered protesters. Every single thing within our nation, because we want our nation to be a nation walking in peace that has that spirit of wisdom and reconciliation marked within this nation. And so we covered our nation during that prayer vigil, and it was very powerful. So if you are at all struggling with prayer time or don't know necessarily what to pray when it comes to our nation as the Bible directs us to, I encourage you guys to watch that episode, and you can just join with us on that episode and agree in intercession for those different topics that we covered. So yeah, check that one out. Today's episode, though, is going to be very, very unique. It is purpose driven, and we're talking about the foundation of our nation because the foundation sets the premise for everything else. And so the premise for this episode is strong families create strong communities create strong cities create strong states, and strong states create strong nations. So we want our nation to be strong. We cannot skip the family. And if we want families to be strong, we cannot ignore faith, marriage, and especially fatherhood. This conversation is focused on men, fathers, future fathers, and men who are willing to take responsibility for the world around them. And my guest today lives this out. He is an author, ordained minister, speaker, coach, and podcaster. And more than anything, he's a man who believes encouragement, accountability, and faith in action can change lives. Yusef Marshall, also known as Mista Yu. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, wow. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yes, it's awesome. So we both attend the same church, and he also leads worship. He has an amazing voice, and a prophetic, spontaneous worship as well. He just flows with whatever the Lord has placed on his heart for that time, and it's really incredible. So you can also check out northpalmchurch.com or .org, I believe, and there
Yeah, I
you'll
think
be able
so.
to see. Am I right? Northpalmchurch.org.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure if it's .com or .org.
Okay, I'm
Now,
gonna look
now,
it up,
now I'm
guys.
wondering. I'm
Well,
like,
this is
yeah,
my
I
church,
don't know.
y'all, but let me make sure, okay? Please
that's,
give
that's
me
kind of
some grace.
important. Now, we both fact checking right now. Northpalm.com. I pull
I
it up
think
and it
it's
just,
.org. I think it's .org.
can we be sure now?
Okay.
Because now
Yeah,
I
I'll
feel
double
weird
check.
now.
I'll double check.
It is .org, it looks like.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
Mike.
I'm like, okay,
But it
so
came
it's
from the
just
back.
not
Okay.
.com. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm like looking at. Okay, yes, it's North Palm. Actually, it's northpalm.org. Okay, so you guys can check out our church,
Ah,
and you'll see words, and you'll see worship there, which Yusef is also part of, and it's incredible. You'll see what all our church is about, and the prophetic move that's taking place, the many lives that have been transformed, and we love it. I love it. I've been going to our church for now 17, a little over 17 years, I believe 18 years now. It's transformed my life completely. Everything I've learned, from finances to getting my first car to saving to business to having my private life with the Lord, be accountable to the Lord, like all those things I've learned came from being connected to our body, and under the leadership of Pastor Mark and Patricia Estes. And so we're both underneath that leadership, and we understand the importance of that accountability, that discipleship,
absolutely.
and the community, because that's what trains us. That's what sends us out for our call. It's not just staying in the four walls, but it's being empowered in that walls to go out and do what the Lord has placed as an assignment for you to do, and to have that backing and to have that maturity or character, so that when you step into those places, you can represent Christ well. And yeah, we're very much about excellence and honoring people, and loving on people and telling the truth and speaking the truth, and also being accountable and being corrected when
Oh
we
yeah,
need to. And so yeah,
yeah.
I've been corrected many times. You know,
Join the club.
yeah, and you receive that because you understand that it serves a greater purpose, and it's to sharpen you. It's not to break you down, it's not to destroy you, but it's to sharpen you, so that when you're entrusted with more, when God puts things on you more or puts you in certain spaces, you have the character to be there, right? Not
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
skill, but the character.
Right.
And so that's what our church is really big on. And Mr. Yusef is going to bring some incredible insight into what we're going to be talking about today, which is the foundation of our nation, which we're talking about fatherhood, we're talking about family. those two things. And he this area of his life is something that the Lord has stirred in him, has cultivated in him to be able to speak into this area, and he's helped many men to be able to grow in this area as well. And so let's start off first, Yusef, before the titles and the platforms, who was Mr. Yu? Who was Yusef Marshall growing up in Brooklyn?
Oh, who was it? Complicated young fella. Latchkey kid. His mom worked 2 jobs and went to school the entire time he lived in her house. So he had his own key by age 10 or 11. He learned how to be independent really quickly. He was in a single parent household. So all the things that you would think would be a lure or temptation for a young man, I experienced it. Gangs, drugs, cults. I was subject to all of those things in that time, but I had a deep desire to please my mother, so that helped me avoid a lot of things that I could have normally gotten into. But I was a strong, real young man. I mean, I came from a household that was very, very deeply entrenched in education, so I was always a bookworm. I still am, I guess. I'm still a nerd to my heart, so I read a lot of books. I'm a researcher. I do a lot of personal work on myself, and I learned that from those times where had to be alone a lot of the times, and all I had was books and encyclopedias and dictionaries, and I just try to learn as much as I can. So I was always a big learner. But for me, outgoing person, which is not really the norm in that area in New York, but that's who I was. I was a friendly, neighborly person. I always wanted to serve people. Not sure where that even came from. My mother's like that, but everybody else in New York, in our area, in our neighborhood, was never like that. So I kind of came up being that kind of person, and I found out later on what the real reason was for why I was that way. It wasn't because of my environment geographically. It was more of a spiritual thing. So that's who I came up as. I was a pretty good young kid. I didn't get into too many scrapes. I was trying to keep level-headed kid for the most part. I was pretty smart. So, but in a nutshell, that's who I was before I began to evolve.
Well, I love that you said that even from young kid, before you, I guess, before you even got closer to the Lord, like you start to see now that the characteristics of who you are is not necessarily always a product of the environment, but it's the deposits that the Lord has placed in there since the beginning, since before you were even born. So it's like,
Absolutely.
because the Lord God tells us that before we were formed in our mother's womb, He knew us, right? So
Right.
basically everything, when God says new, it's not just like, oh, I know your name. It's everything, because the Word of God tells us that He knows the number of hairs on our head. Like He's very much
Oh
ingrained
yeah.
in the tiny minute details. So that's beautiful that you could pinpoint what God had placed in you that you definitely didn't see around you at the time. What do you think that your upbringing taught you, positively or negatively, about manhood, responsibility, and leadership?
Um, it's kind of twofold. Great question, Aisha. I think the first part, I was in a religious household without question. My mother and her mother before her were deeply religious. That particular denomination was not one that I would say fed me. It was more about practices and rituals and duty and things like that. And it wasn't so much about presence and experience and relationship. So I I, I was in that, but I think it kind of caused me to crave more
Hmm.
because I always felt like there was more than just these little random things that made people decide if I was good or bad, morality type things, and not so much relationship and being intuitive when it comes to the spirit of God. So I feel like I was missing something there, but I didn't know what it was at the time. Also, I was in a single parent household, so my father was not willing to be a part of my life, and that kind of impacted me in many ways. It made me look at relationships almost on a temporary basis. Like, you know what? If I get close to you, or you're going to disappear, or you're going to not show up, I'm going to turn around, you're going to be gone and never come back. So it made me distrust, you know, relationships that could have been fatherly in nature, or maybe some kind of mentorship, or just a friend that was older that knew more about the world. It made me not want to be so trusting to give myself to that because I had some trust issues because of what was going on with my father. Literally, as a matter of fact, I chased him across the country trying to get an answer to just one simple question. Why don't you want to be here with me? So I found my way from New York all the way to California to just get the answer to that question. Why don't you want to be here with me? So why did you leave and never come back? Why did you ever call? And I spent many, many years of my childhood and even into some years of adulthood trying to get the answer to that question. So it impacted me because as a father of 3 daughters, now we got 6 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren now. Just found out we got another great-grandchild on the way. I struggled with trying to be a father. Because I'm like, how do you be a father when you don't know what it looks like? You only seen it on the Cosby Show. How do you know how to do this? I haven't had an example of that. So it was a long time struggle before I came into a deep relationship with the Lord, before I found that he was my father and the only father I really truly need at the end of the day. But I didn't know that at the time. So for me, it was a struggle to try to figure out what's a man supposed to be like, because TV says I'm supposed to be rough and tumble. I'm supposed to, if somebody offends me, I'm supposed to punch them out, or I can't cry. All the things that are these norms that people talk about that men are supposed to do. I believe that stuff. I didn't have any other countering example of it. So very complicated childhood, but I think I came out okay.
Wow, that's beautiful. Wow. I feel like not only does that question is so loaded, but your answer is even more. When you look at your upbringing and what you did not see growing up, and trying to not repeat that pattern. In my own personal experience, not to dive too much into it, because I want more of what God's placed inside of you to come out during this time to help fathers and men and moms who have children and they're raising men, and even fathers as well. So when you look at the fact that you didn't have, when you don't have that example in front of you, I think the one thing that I love about God is that he reaches us where we are, and he does what he can to pull us, and we have to say yes to him. But then when we do, he starts to bring in, and they're not the necessary, sometimes it's not necessarily the person that should have been there, because that person doesn't want to be there, because we all have free will. But he'll bring in a substitute, somebody that can guide you, in the ways that you should go, and train you and let you see what you weren't able to see. And I think, and of course, it starts with us accepting God as the Father and being healed, so that we can receive, like, because you mentioned that when you've been hurt like that by father or a mother, in this case your father, it's hard for you to trust people, because our mechanism for protecting ourselves is to put that wall up or guard ourselves, right? And then when we do that, it's we when we ourselves in our own strength as human beings put that wall up, yeah, we're protecting ourselves for one thing, but we're also forfeiting other things that are just as equally
Absolutely.
important. So, for example, I could put a wall up and say that I can't let you get close to me, but I'm also forfeiting a relationship. I'm forfeiting that the opportunity to trust somebody that is actually good for me, and because I haven't seen that, I can't even recognize it, right, when it is right in front of me. So the very thing that could be there to help me is actually the thing I'm pushing away.
Oh wow.
So it's
Yeah.
very good. You please go more deep into that if you want to. You can
Yeah.
expound on that before we go on
Yeah,
to the next
absolutely,
one.
absolutely. I mean, that's a real thing that you're describing right there. And being in areas, specific areas of ministry, and then just what I've learned through the coaching, my coaching journey, which has been about 27, 28 years or so. I see people who have 20, 30, 40 years of this kind of emotional baggage, and it's been left undealt with. I mean, could you imagine coming home from a long trip and all your clothes are still inside inside your bag, and you don't take them out and wash them and stuff? Could you imagine what that situation is going to be like when you finally open the bag? I mean, that's what's happening spiritually to a lot of people. They have this baggage in it. It's not touched. It's a sore spot. It's sitting in the closet. They ain't going to mess with it, but it creates a stench. It creates a situation that can affect everybody in the household after a certain amount of time. And I just feel like, dealing with these things and being upfront. And it's something that men do struggle with. Transparency and open and honesty sometimes is weaponized against men sometimes in certain situations. So I do understand why that happens. But it's something that honestly I got freed by being willing to be open to do that. You were talking about having people around that kind of take the place of the person who didn't want to be there. Unfortunately, my story is not it's not cherries and whipped cream. I didn't have that. I didn't have mentorship or a quote unquote father figure to speak of. There are people who may have tried, but their worst inclinations got the better of them, and they couldn't stay in that capacity. So I went through a lot of years never having that. I found more solace and more mentorship in books, and I learned a lot about myself through books than I did about somebody who was there to walk me through a journey. I didn't have an Elijah walking me through. I didn't have a Paul walking me through a journey, and I hadn't had that. Honestly, I've been in ministry this in a couple of months. It'll be 30, well, about 30 years almost. I've never really had that. So it's one of those things where I'm really learning how to be reliant on God the Father, and for God to wear all the hats that He wears in my life, because I don't have any point of reference. You know what? This person did this. This is my spiritual father. He brought me through this. A lot of people have that. I'm not mad. I'm not envious. I'm grateful that you have that. But that's not my story. I really didn't have that a lot.
And I think God knew exactly what He was doing in your life, and how He would maneuver through that. Because the thing is, we also can't box God in. So yeah, he can use that, and then He can do it a different way, however He wants to do it. But the purpose is still there. Um, for me personally in my life, I didn't have my biological father. My story is very strange, very unique. My mom was violated when she was 14, and then she got pregnant with me. And then it's okay. And then at 15, she had me, and I didn't find out who my biological father was until 2023, I believe it was.
Wow.
So I was like 30 something. Oh, I'm 34 now. So I was like 32,
Yeah,
something like that.
about that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so, or yeah, 30, yeah, 30, I think. So, yeah, and then, finding out but before finding out who my biological father was, like I did have my stepdad in my life, when I turned 9, up until I was like 15 years old, and he wasn't perfect, but he was what I needed for that time.
Yeah.
And I still had so much more to learn, because my stepdad, his father wasn't there for him.
Mm.
So, there were things that he didn't know how to do, but he did his best. And I can only really say really good things about him, because he protected me. I grew up in the hood, and it was very violent, and there's a lot of sexual abuse and stuff. Thank God he protected me from that. It was just because of his name and who he was. People feared that. So like I say, he wasn't perfect. Like he was selling drugs and stuff, but people feared him, which is why I was always protected. And
Wow.
and he kind of took me under his wing like I was his own kid, and taught me, school, that it was important, even though he was doing, crazy stuff. He was like, "You're going to get an education. You're going to graduate." So there were good things that came out of that,
Mm.
and there were certain places he could take me, and then certain places he couldn't. And then when I came to North Palm, that's when things started to change, because first I accepted Christ in my heart as my everything, my savior, my father, my friend, everything. And he started to heal me. And then I think that's how I started to see that, like, the people in my life, Pastor Mark, Gene, at that time, they were men in my life that really had my best interest at heart. Um, like I remember Gene is another guy in our church, guys, and he's a leader in our church. He's from Haiti. And I remember one day we had a Valentine's Day party, and I was still learning how to, love myself and not be kind of like flashy and all this stuff, which is why I'm very grateful that I didn't become an influencer or creator until after the Lord had saved me and I had gone through my process. Because before then, I was very, very much all about me. But So I remember we had a Valentine's Day party at our church, and I came to the church. I invited my cousin to go with me, and I was still in my process learning about God and learning how to dress nicely because at the time I was still dressing provocatively. And I came to church, and I went to the mall with my cousin, and we were running late, so I just grabbed an outfit from a store that was a very provocative store that I always bought stuff from. And I was like, well, let's go to the store, let's get it. So we got our clothes, and I had the skirt was kind of short. The funny thing is, I felt like it was too short. And I asked my cousin if it was okay, and she's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why. I'm still learning. She's still learning. So asking her is not really going to help. So anyway, I
There
put
you
on this
go.
outfit. We changed in the car. I got into the building of the church, and Gene pulls me to the side. He pulls me into a private room. He leaves the door open, and I notice all of this that he's doing. So he says, "Come on, I talk to you for a second." I was like, "Okay." So he takes me into the green room. He leaves the door open as he talks with me. He stands by the door, and he said, "Come on in." And then he says, "First, I want to ask you this question: How do you see me?" I said, "Like a father, just like that, because that's how I saw him." He had taught me so much about God, and I had grown to trust him. And he said, "Great answer. That's exactly the answer I wanted you to give." He was like, "I want you to understand that you are a woman of God." And he started speaking to my. He didn't say anything about my clothes. He just started speaking to me, my identity, and he was like, "I want you to know who you are. You are a woman of God, and you will attract the right man, and the right man will see you as a woman of God, and they will love you for what God has placed in you, and what God is doing in you, and the character of you, not just what is on the outside. Not that you're not beautiful, but it's going to be more than that." And he just started speaking to me, and immediately after he's finished talking, I was like, "Is this about my outfit?" Like, he didn't even say it. You said it. I said, okay, I'll go to change. I'm gonna go. I said I have my pants still in the car. I would change the skirt, and the top was fine. It was just the skirt was too short, and so I changed and came back in, and I felt great about that. Now, he had been in a place in my life where I respected him. So when he did that, when he pulled me to the side and started speaking my identity, it's like I was a teenager at this time. So I was like, it was like I was craving this structure that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
I wanted to do the right thing. I just didn't know that this was the right thing. Like, I was just doing what was habit. It was a pattern, and those things have to be rewired. Like, you have to change the way you think when you come to the kingdom of God. Starts changing those things so that you can see things properly and different, and start to see yourself and love yourself for who you are. So it's interesting that uh, Gene played that role in my life, and I to this very day, I respect him, and we have a great relationship, him and his wife, and they're very close friends of me and my husband. But yeah, so that gets me into this next question I have for you is like a lot of men inherit patterns. So we talk about like this habitual thing that we grew up with, and we inherit these patterns before we discover purpose. So looking back
Hmm.
now, how did your early life prepare you to eventually speak into faith, fatherhood, and leadership?
How did early life influence the now? Hmm. Great question. I like it. I like it. Uh, I think one of the things that this might come off weird, and I reckon even in my head it sounds weird, but there's always a perception of a mama's boy being in a negative, and people get ridiculed for this. Uh, for me, I'm not saying it was the ideal situation. Having a loving father in a household is always a good situation because a family together is obviously better together. But when I look at you know the relationship I had with my mother, I don't think she overcompensated on purpose because of a father not being there present in the house. But we had a relationship where it was almost like she could talk to me sternly and let me know where I'm messing up, discipline wise, correction wise. But it felt like I was talking to a friend a lot of the times, and it gave me a lot of comfort, and it made me want to please her. And what I did was I looked at her life because I understood the background from the island that she's from and where my grandmother's from and what they went through there and what they dealt with, and to see them come to this country and do what they've done, how they crafted a viable life for themselves. where they are not just coming and taking and being consumed, but they're serving and giving still. Even when they don't have as much as you'd like to have to be able to give, they were doing that. And I feel like that's one of the things that I pulled from that existence, from that experience, is a heart of generosity. And I really feel like that is what kind of drives almost everything that I do. I mean, I've been coaching for 27, almost 28 years, and a lot of that, I think 25 of it was free. I was coaching people free for 2.5 decades. I look at times where I've given my literal shoes. My wife and I at a restaurant in South Carolina. I give my literal shoes off my feet because a young boy who walks in there with his parents doesn't have anything. His shoes are just destroyed, barely on his feet. I'm like, why are you even out here with this? I found out what his shoe size was, and I gave him my shoes. And I walked to the car in my socks and drove home in my socks. Every time I've given my little shirt or sweater off my back to give to somebody, I credit God for that overall, but my mom and my grandmother, they forged that kind of lifestyle of generosity. And I believe that's a big part in why I do what I do and why I reach out to people the way I do, how I treat men who are in similar backgrounds as myself. It's because I want them to have what I didn't have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So before we get on to the next portion of our time today, I want to introduce one of our sponsors. This is Jace Medical. And Jace Medicals, I want to just pause for a second because Jace Medicals, they deal with in preparation for natural events that could take place. And so I want you guys to take a look at this video and we'll come right back. You probably saw the flooding in Texas, like major flash floods in San Antonio. People getting rescued from their cars, neighborhoods underwater. It's heartbreaking. And honestly, it's a wake-up call. We don't think about this stuff until it's too late. Like, what if the roads are shut down? What if you can't get to a pharmacy? What if someone in your house needs antibiotics or emergency meds and help is not coming fast enough? That's where Jace Medical Kits come in. They are phenomenal. It's a little emergency supply of life-saving antibiotics and other meds prescribed to you and shipped to you. This is prescribed medications from real physicians. They are able to customize a package for you. I didn't get mine because I'm paranoid. I got mine because I've got kids, a husband, family, and friends and neighbors around me. And if a flood, storm, blackout, or whatever happens, you don't want to wait on medical services if you're someone who requires meds like albuterol or insulin. So if you've been thinking or haven't set a plan for having emergency meds on standby, don't wait. Jace Medical makes it super simple. You can use my code Aisha, IESHA, and you'll get a great discount on medications that you need. You can find the link in the bio or the description. Hey guys, if you want to check out Jace Medical, go to jacemedical.com. You can use my code Aisha, all lowercase, when you're checking out, and it will give you a very nice discount. I love Jace Medicals. They have real doctors prescribing these medications, and this is your own set of medications in case there is a natural disaster. You have, something prepared for you in areas of medications that are a necessity. So check them out, jacemedical.com, and then use my code when you do. Okay, so Yusef, you shared with me privately that you escaped death multiple times and that those moments became conversational points for you. Take us into the first one. Like, what happened and where was your faith at that time?
The first one, I felt like it was the most pivotal because even though I lived in a neighborhood where I was acquainted with death, I was acquainted with tragedy, I was acquainted with loss. I've seen people die in the streets that I live on. I've seen houses burn down and people are homeless instantly. I've seen all kinds of things. But one, I was run over by a city bus in New York City when I was in Brooklyn when I was about 13 years old. The driver, this is a weird story, but I'll try to keep it just brief, just for brevity's sake. He was driving the bus and customarily they pull a lever and it opens the door. Well, I took one foot onto the bus to get on and he closed the door before I got the other foot on. And then started driving away. It looked like he was in a trance because he didn't have any facial feature or reaction. He was just like looking straight ahead and just driving out. And all my friends on the back of the bus screaming. And I'm hanging out of the bus and coming dangerously fast to a fire hydrant where my head, is almost in line with the fire hydrant. My leg came out and the bus ran over me and then eventually stopped. And it was traumatic because everything seemed to slow down. I saw all my friends in slow motion in the back screaming and crying, calling my name. I'm like, I didn't know if I was out of body, if I was, I couldn't even tell because I'm like, the bus just ran me over. I didn't know if I was still here or what. And that was probably one of the most traumatic ones because I'm like, wow. It began to cause a chain of events to happen because my mother was pregnant with my sister at the time. So I was thinking about her like, she's dangerously close to being, coming to term. I'm thinking about her feelings about this. Like, is it going to stress her out? Is it going to make her lose the baby? So I was thinking of all kind of stuff. So that was probably one of those situations that was the scariest. Cause I'm like, when you don't have any control of that, it's like, it makes it even double scary, if that's a word. So that was the one thing, but I saw God's grace in that because I'm like, this could have been so bad. I mean, if I only had one leg, at least I was still alive. So I just saw life differently from that experience.
Wow. At that time in your life, I know that you were very young. When did you give your life to the Lord?
Well, that was after another near-death experience. I was actually involved, and this is a story that's probably going to turn into another story, so I'll just try to be brief as I can. Sorry for layering on stories here. But when I was telling you about my upbringing as a young brown and black man, when you don't have a father in the house, you're susceptible to a lot of things: drugs, cults, gangs, you name it. I was subject to all of those things. Well, during that time, in a search for validation and for love and for brotherhood, I found myself joined in an Islamic cult. And I was involved with them for about 10 years. What they offered was the kind of thing that everybody should want, but I didn't read the fine print. And I found out that what they were offering, there was more behind it that I didn't realize. And long story short, I saw things that were unspeakable that were taking place there. I saw the impact of demonic spirits. I saw brutality. I saw evil face to face. I saw malice and all the things that didn't line up with the love that I read about from God in the scriptures. And there was a point where my life was being threatened in that situation. So I knew it was time for me to go. So I kind of did what the spies did when Rahab had to hide them so they can get out. That's what I did to get out of the place where I was without being beaten or worse. Because that was the threat being made against my life. And during the transition time, I was the victim of an armed robbery. A gentleman I was still wearing Islamic garb, so there's a reputation about those people in New York. They run deep. So you miss one, the whole community can be at your doorstep. It could be a thing. So there was a bit of fear and intimidation that was involved with that particular sect of Islam at the time. But I was actually still in my garb. Mentally, I think I was already out, but I hadn't fully transitioned out yet. And a guy came up from behind a tree. I was walking to my mother's house after working and put a revolver to my head, or close to my head. As far as my microphone is from my face right now, that's how far the gun was. I believe it was loaded. It was a revolver, so I could see that. And he had his finger on the trigger, which is like a no-no for anybody that's a gun owner. You don't do that. You don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot something, just for safety reasons. He had his finger on the trigger and his hand was shaking violently, a few inches from my head. So I'm sitting here thinking, my mom is right over here, 5 houses down. Is this how I'm going to go out? So it made me reevaluate my entire life. I did come out without being shot. I didn't lose anything of any real value. And I did what you see in the movies, what you see on TV shows. I got to my mom's step after the adrenaline started to die down. And I said, look to the heavens, speaking into the air, speaking into the ether. I said, God, if you're real, you know how it goes. I need you to do this. I need you to show up and do this. And I believe he did that. It was about 8 to 10 years before I saw that actually culminate. I was still in New York for a while, living my life. But about 8 to 10 years later, I got an opportunity to. I was doing music up there. I was an R&B and hip hop artist, independent artist in New York at the time, and some things were going on with our record company that wasn't quite right. So we didn't like that. So we decided to change scenery and move to South Carolina of all places. I have no idea why we picked this place, but moved to South Carolina to start doing some production together. We came down here. I met my beautiful wife of almost 30 years now. And I invited myself to her church. I heard so much about God and Jesus from her. I said, is it the same one that my mother and my grandmother follow, or is this a different? Because it sounded different to me. It didn't sound religious and practical and routine and ritualistic. So I wanted to go to her church to find out this Jesus she was talking about. Maybe I'll meet him there. That was my plan. And I ran smack into the presence of God. I would call it the fiery presence of God. I feel like I was on fire. And I was on my face crying on the floor. Service was going on, and I didn't see or hear anything that was going on. I was in a whole different dimension, if you will. And that's when I realized that not only did God answer my prayer, but he saved my soul. And that was the change that kind of changed everything and kind of sparked the person you're seeing now.
That's so beautiful. I wanna kind of hit more on the Islamic portion of your life. And correct me if I'm wrong. When I was in college, I was at the College of Charleston. I took a religious studies class, and my teacher was the head of the religious study unit. And this woman was well traveled. She was brilliant in different religions around the world. And for that class, I took that class because as an evangelist, I wanted to learn about these different religions because I was at this college and I met Buddhists, people that, believe in Buddhism and all that. And I was ministering to them. I even had, thank the Lord, a couple of them actually gave their life to the Lord, which was really cool. And just ministering to them and just eating with them and being with them and talking about God and just being that display. And it was just natural for me because like God did so much for me. I'm like, I got to tell you about him. And you learn that there's only one God, so you start sharing that with people, and some people accept, some people don't. But when I was in this religious studies class, I took because I wanted to learn more about how I could reach many different people, and I also thought I would be a missionary too. I thought I would go
Okay.
when I was younger. So this woman, she would. The funny thing is, I don't know how many people were Christian in that class. And at this time, I was going through the school of discipleship at our church, and this is, guys, where they train you about the Word of God. You go to a deep study of the Word of God, and you're with a class, and you learn basically the values of our church and what we believe, and you start to understand the Word of God more, and so where you're able to articulate it in a loving way, and you do that soundly and biblically. So, and at this time, school of discipleship was a year-long process because I think right now it's like a month for new people that are coming to our farm. So it was a year-long fun process. I really enjoyed it because I got to meet new friends. But to get back to my point, at this point, so as you understand, I have been learning the Word of God, right? And so this woman, the teacher, or the at the college, she would always say, she would tie back into something that we were learning back to the Bible for some reason, and it was always critical. So one thing I remember her saying was, she's like, in Hinduism, or we were talking about different religions, she goes like, you got to attain this or attain that, and then in the Christian religion, for example, you can't have the knowledge of God, you can't know the knowledge of God. And I'm like, I would always challenge the things she would say because of what I learned at North Palm, and they encourage you at North Palm to read your Bible. You need to read it to know what it
Without
says.
question.
You need to do
Absolutely.
deep study. You need to understand the Greek, the Hebrew meaning. Like they are very big on that. And so like you just learn when you are in that environment. So I was like, raise my hand every single time to challenge her. And I said, that's not true because the word of God says that my people die for lack of knowledge. I said, so why would he tell us that if we couldn't obtain it? So, and then she would always be like, okay, let's talk about this. Why don't you come to my office? And I would go to her office and we'd always talk all the time. And I would always raise my hand every single time. And at the end of that class, I had people come up and were like, thank you so much for standing up, because they were all on mute. I don't know if it's because I don't know why, but I just could not, because I was like, don't put that lie out in the air. God wants us to know him. He wants us to understand things. And but we had to study the Quran. And I remember I laid down, my Bible, because this is a part of the class. You have to study Quran, you have to study the Hindu books that she gave us, and all this different things. And you have to take tests on them. So I studied had to read the Quran, and I remember I said, God, I know that there's all these different things, and all these religions can sound to man as if they are the right thing. You need the Spirit of God to discern this stuff. So I said, okay, God, I'm going to lay down the Bible. I'm going to lay down everything I learned, and I'm going to ask you to speak to me, about this. And so I read through the Quran, and I got this feel, and this is why I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, of your own personal experience. But when you read the Bible, you can feel the presence of, it's different. You feel something. It's like you feel the presence of God. It's like a peace, and you keep reading, you start to, it's weird, it's just cool, it's just the Spirit of God. You just know something's different. When I read the Quran, it made me feel that I was having to, like, be in this place of self-righteousness, where it was more so ritual, like you said, ritual based, but more so like my performance, and a set of rules, and like it was made, it felt man-made, because I had read the Bible, I understood the Bible, and I'd studied it, and then I had to read the Quran, and I was like, it does. If you read it, you kind of feel like, and you don't read the Bible, it does feel like this is right, because per a human being, like, there should be a set of rules, there should be a set of things that I have to do to obtain this, like, whereas the Bible is like, it's your faith, like, just believe. If you believe that, if you accept Jesus Christ as Lord, and you believe in your heart that God rose him from the dead, then you shall be saved, right? Which is like, it's simple. It's like, this is what brings you to righteousness. This is what brings you to acceptance of the Father, right? Into heaven. Whereas this other thing, I have to do a set of different things to get there. And it kind of felt like more so like I was going to be in this place of self-righteousness, where I'd have to prove, and if that makes sense, I have to prove, and I have to do to earn. Uh, what are your thoughts? Because you've got more experience than me.
Yeah, I don't remember the entire Quran, just to be fair, but I did read it. And like you said, when you read the Bible, because words are spirit, you are definitely picking up on the heart of the writer of the Bible. So that's fair. If you haven't experienced that, you don't know what you're missing. But in regards to the Quran, that's definitely something. I felt a couple of things when I read. I felt, like you said, kind of like it was a schoolmaster talking to me, telling me how to do these things. But for me, it felt like they were, even if I did those things, there's still a chance it might not be enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of had to me, this is what I recall from many years ago. It had kind of an indefinite feel, like, do all this stuff, but there's still a chance that you might not, you might have to do more. It didn't seem to have finality to it.
Wow.
The only thing that had, well, I saw finality was in the judgment. If you don't do this, you're considered a non-believer, and this final thing is going to happen to you. That part was the only part that's final. In the works and in the efforts to do this, I never got that. And the other thing I felt was frenzy. I felt like this antagonistic is the only word I can think of to describe it. It's probably not the right word, but I felt like he was like a frenzied kind of feeling, and that's not. It's actually the opposite of peace. It's not peace at all. And I felt that when I read it, and it was almost like, when people who I was in community with, when they would read it, you can tell their attitude changed. They were hopped up, like they were ready to fight. I'm like, and I noted that, but didn't question it, didn't say anything about it. I kind of just like sat back and observed, like, wow, they read this and now they want to, and now they're more aggressive. So how can that be so? So I was just trying to understand what I was reading, but yeah, you're totally right. It definitely does have that feel to it when you read it.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for breaking that down. I wonder, that kind of makes me wonder if this is the reason why many people get to this radical place.
It's exactly the reason why. This is exactly why. It's honestly, and this is, to be fair, I was in one of 73 different sects of Islam at the time.
Wow.
The number may be increased or decreased. I don't know. Haven't done the research. But at the time, in that time in the 90s, it was 73 different sects of Muslims worldwide. I was just in one of 73 different sects. The one I was in, they definitely had a lot of anti-American views for sure. It was a hotbed for all the things that, especially, and I mean this with no disrespect, they had a massive Black and brown population. So you can imagine what the offerings were. Whatever you imagine in your mind that Black and brown folks were dealing with in that area of the world, in New York, in those times in the 80s and the 90s, whatever you can imagine we dealt with, areas where we didn't get what we needed, or we were marginalized. These teachings definitely spoke to that, and lit the fire, ignited that, and made that something that, kind of I won't say radicalized, because I know where we're going with that, but I don't think I really mean that in this setting. But it definitely did ignite and stoke some of those fires that Black and brown folks were dealing with at the time, anyways. So it definitely spoke to that for sure.
Kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you, I'm pretty sure you've heard of this, but I don't know how much you know of Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City, because his campaign, he ran on a lot of the promises of the issues that's happening in that city for those that are struggling, financially. And it kind of, what you said just reminded me of that, like hitting on those pain points and promising this and that, to gain the support of the people. Yeah.
And he got it, didn't
every
he?
politician does that. But I think when you are talking about somebody who believes, in this religion, it's very unique. Because the aim is not necessarily, oh, just make me your politician. There is always that other motive, right? Of conquering the world for Muhammad and for Islam.
Hopefully it's not Sharia law, because that's not what we need.
Yeah. Man, good. That's good. So my next question for you, for us to reflect on, it seems like a lot of men don't slow down until life like forces them to. Let's talk about, we talked about your second near-death experience. Can you go into, just give us like the third near-death experience you have, and
Third.
how's that different, and what changed permanently in you?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. This happened more than three times, but those two were the biggest. But I think the other one I could think of was, I was in New York at the time. My mom had she was renting the brownstone that we lived in for most of my life, and she finally got her own house in the area of Flatbush. And what my plan was to go and surprise her at her new house. That was my plan. So I got into my little car, had me a little red Toyota, got in my car, and I was going to go ahead and go and sneak up and visit. She had no idea. I would have bring some flowers and candy and the whole 9 yards. Just surprised and say, proud of you, Mom, for getting you on. Because I watched her work her entire life. Two jobs and going to school in the medical field. I watched her do this, reading calculus books to her eyes till she fell asleep in them. I watched. So I even made food for her almost every night. Same meal every night, but she loved me. She didn't say nothing. It was French fries and chicken patties. She didn't say anything. But
sounds like a good meal. I love French fries.
Me too. The chicken patties were good too at the time, but I couldn't use the stove. I wasn't allowed to do that when she wasn't home, so I was doing the oven. So whatever. But I tried to sneak up to visit her, and I had to go to a stop sign. This is a four-way stop, but the road is so massive that you can't see the cars on either side until they're there. It's like a little hill they come over. Yeah. Well, I look both ways like you're supposed to do. I even paused and waited a little longer. Went ahead and drove to the stop sign. All I heard was a buzzing in my right ear. A buzzing that grew in intensity in seconds. Car slammed into me, and my car went into a fire hydrant, knocked me out. I thought, I woke up like, didn't know where I was. I thought I was a goner, I had to call my mom, and she had to come out there, and she was just panicked and stressed out. It was just like, what is going on? I just came to surprise you, Mom, but I stressed you out. instead of surprising you. I made your life miserable. But that those kind of things, I didn't realize if there's any kind of spiritual connection to those things at the time. But for me, I was just like, I don't think I'm unlucky or I don't have no bad juju. I mean, I didn't think that kind of. I'm just like, why is this stuff happening? I'm trying to do good things and bad stuff is happening to me. So it just made me kind of just reevaluate life and look at, you know what? Tomorrow's not promised. I got to take advantage of today. So those kind of incidents, like all three of those, what it really made me do was not get so caught up in the future, because New Yorkers can do that. They get caught up in the next thing and ignore, what's happening right now. So I learned from that, and still even learning today, not to put the future in such a priority that I forget about the present and enjoy the flowers while I can appreciate them now, and learn to kind of enjoy the present while I have it, because in 24 hours, it's gone to the next thing. So just kind of learn how to just appreciate life. So those situations help me do that.
Wow, man. Okay. We're going to dissect this more right after the next sponsor, and this is Your Skincare. Your Skincare, guys, is a brand I've been using since 2023. I love this brand. They have all clean ingredients. All of their things are made here in the USA. You can use their products when you're pregnant, which is one of the main reasons why I really love this brand. And they have both skincare and they have makeup options that you could choose from. And the makeup options, I'm telling you, slays. Their finishing powder was one of my top favorite finishing powders when I first started doing TikTok shop and growing my audience and my sales via TikTok shop. And I really just fell in love with that. I sold a bunch of their finishing powders because it's talc free, it's very clean, and it's lightweight. So it goes for dry skin, oily skin, and it mattifies. It's just bomb for a skincare brand to design something this clean that also delivers. So if you want to check them out, I have two options for you that you could choose from that will be a benefit of benefit for you. Sorry. You can either screenshot that link, or if you see the show notes, you should be able to see this link, the link at the very top of this card. If you click on that, it'll take you directly to their website where you can it'll take you to an AI tool that will help you to basically get a targeted plan for you. It'll ask you questions about your demographic, if you're a coffee drinker, all these things that affect the skin. And it'll give you a customized skincare plan routine that will target the issues that you have and the reasons why those issues are there. And then alongside that, you'll get free birthday gifts, free refills, free shipping, and you'll get a discount with your order if you go directly to their website. They ship within 3 business days max, guys. It's awesome. Just like Amazon. If you decide to use my Amazon storefront, you can go that route too. It's Aisha Schreiner. You can just look it up. And if you decide to go through Amazon to purchase their items, it's Your Skincare with the little apostrophe between the U and the R. You can use the code Aisha 15 off, and that'll give you 15% off. But that's the only perk you get for Amazon. Okay, it's good, but if you decide to go to the website, you'll get a little bit more. So it's up to you, whichever one you like to do. Shipping should not be an issue either way. Okay. All right. I know we're kind of getting to a close here, but I want to get into Noun Fatherhood, the pillar of family and strength. Yusef, you wrote the heart of the stepfather and built family without a personal blueprint. And we just talked about that a little bit. You didn't even have mentors in your life. So, what did that teach you about intentional fatherhood?
Well, in those days, my only example of a fatherhood was the Cosby Show, 1984, in the early to mid 80s. So I didn't have a lot of examples of that beyond the sitcom. And when I wrote The Heart of the Stepfather, this was in, I remember the year and the date. It's amazing, 2016. When I wrote that, I wrote it in 6 weeks, 194 pages. I would go to work at my government job, and I'd come home and I would write into the night. So I finished it and most of that 6 weeks were just editing and going back and proofreading. It was written long before in a month or so. But I was on fire. I felt like it wasn't just therapy for the people who were reading it who may have to deal with the whole father versus stepfather narrative, or just a narrative of what men would, how men are seen, how men are trusted in and experienced in today's time. So for me, I really felt like I needed to get therapy for myself because that book helped me and healed me as much as it did anybody else. So I felt like I had to write it because I heard from so many people who were in my position, or even maybe even in a worse situation where they had violence in the household and a lot of other things. And I didn't have a lot of that. It was just, I feel like it was a clarion call to the people who are doing fatherhood right. I, I joke about this, but it's not really a joke. It's kind of one of my, it's kind of a tongue in cheek kind of thing. When Mother's Day come around, it's a full court press. You see all of the commercials. You can't take your eyes off them. They're on every channel, no matter what you're watching on TV. You hear about it on the radio. Mother's Day deals, all kind of stuff. Father's Day coming around, you're gonna get a tool, a visor, or a hat made of macaroni. That's the pinnacle. And I felt like we were fight. I felt like I was part of a fight to serve marginalized men who are doing fatherhood right, and you never hear about it. You never hear about the stories of men who are taking care of their business. All you hear are the outliers, people who are not doing it, who are abandoning their kids, not showing up for their kids, and just being horrible examples of what a father is. So I feel like that book was, at least that was my plan at the time. That book was to be an eye-opening expose into what men are really doing that doesn't get talked about. There's a lot of men out here that are excellent fathers, and you never hear a word about it. So the book was designed to kind of open some eyes on that front. Short story.
Do you think that society has lowered expectation for fathers or discouraged men from stepping fully into that role?
Society? uh, I don't think society has lowered expectations. I kind of feel like society just has decided that it's not really relevant. It's not important. I seen it in the school system when I was going to do things with my girls and try to be a father, be a attendant, go to PTA meetings and that kind of stuff. They just it was like we weren't relevant. And I seen that across the board. You know, mothers were the one that you talk to. The fathers are just there. They're just sperm donors, I guess you could say. Nobody even cares. So society is not even lowering the bar. They just don't seem to care. We seem to be non-existent. And I hear that from a lot of men that they kind of agree with that assessment.
I love your desire to make sure that you put on notice what's not being reported, about the fathers that are actually doing it. Like at our church, I love that our church has a many different fathers, even those that are black, brown, because that seems to be the thing, which most black men are not in the homes. But when I look at our church, it's the culture is so different. I
Yeah.
remember when I went to when I was an educator with Heritage Community Services, and I would go to these different schools, and I remember I would talk about my husband and I, and he's white and I'm black, but I don't think about it like that. Like I'm not like, oh, my man is white. I love him.
I'm glad you
That's
don't say
yeah. I don't think about it
that.
like that. Yeah, he's white, but
That's
who
funny.
cares? And so when I talk about him at these schools, though, it's funny that these are teenagers, are high school students, and the first thing they'll ask me when I talk about my husband's character and who he was, like as I talk about as it relates to what I'm teaching, because I only give what when it relates. They're like, "What? Can we see a picture of your husband?" I'm like, "Sure," and I show them a picture, and they'll be like, "We knew it. He's white," and I'm like,
Wow.
yes, I get that so much, and I'm like, I get where they're coming from, especially if you grew up in a home where your father was black or your stepfather was black, and they didn't, give a great display of what a father looks like. I get it because that's all you've seen. So you think on the other side, and because you don't hear it, necessarily reported that this is not necessarily just a one person or one sided thing. Like this could happen across the board. It might be more prevalent in one society or one demographic, but it happens across the board. But when you look at our church, for example, I'm like, this is where I tell them, I'm like, no, black men actually, there are black men that actually are very faithful to their families and their children, and they're very involved in their kids' lives. And they're like, where that at? Where can I find, And I'm like, you need to come to the right church, like our church, like there's a standard. Our pastor holds the men, Pastor Mark, he holds a standard, right? And he expects the men in leadership under him to hold that stand. And it's a godly standard, like the word of God says, if you don't take care of your family, you're worse than an unbeliever. So and he doesn't, Pastor Mark doesn't sugarcoat that for nobody. So it's like, and he's like, you have to provide for your family. He's really big on that, and I love that. Many the men under, we have a ton of men in our church that they are growing in that, even if they didn't have a father figure in home. We're seeing that. So, but I think it definitely is something that has to be, you know, you learn, or you, God meets you where you are, and you start to see that or desire something different, because you just don't want your kids to grow up experiencing what you did. You want something
Absolutely.
better.
Absolutely.
And yeah. um so I know we're getting kind of close to the end of our time here. Do you want to comment on that before we move to the next question?
We can move on. Go ahead.
Okay. So um as we're going to get to the end of our time here, because we're right at 3. um but give me 1 second. Let me switch out here. My laptop doesn't die on us.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there we go. We're good. We're good. Okay. So I did have a couple more questions for you, but I want to pick the best one as we close out. Um, I think this one is really good. Maybe for those that are watching, I'm trying to give y'all the best, juiciest question that I could give Yusef to answer for us. That'll leave y'all with something very encouraging, inspiring. Let's end with this one. How does
Okay.
faith anchor a man when leadership feels heavy?
Repeat that real quick for me.
Mhm.
You might.
How does faith anchor a man when leadership feels heavy?
I think that's a great question. I think faith anchors a man when leadership gets heavy, when we can have a good sense of why we're doing what we're doing and who we're doing it for. If we're trying to
Mm,
please people, and whether it be on social media with analytics and likes and data and subscribes, if we're trying to please those people who you really can't please, you find yourself in a hamster wheel. But if you recognize that as a leader, you're only leading because you've been graced to lead by someone, I believe that's when faith kicks in. So that was a really short answer, but hope that makes sense.
that was a powerful one. That was a really good answer. That was the most concise, powerful answer I think I've
Well, that's
gotten.
nice.
It's really
Thank you.
good. Yeah, that's really good. Um, I love that. I think that could be applied for all of us, me as a woman,
Of
all of us, like
course.
getting back to purpose,
Absolutely.
purpose, as to the why. And that ties into everything, right? Because I think, I'm not a man, but when I think about my life, when I think about, when something gets overwhelming or heavy for me, it's the why. I go back to, and they teach this in business too, your why. But the why has to be more like, it has to be more real and more tangible and more purposeful. That makes sense. Like,
Yeah,
I can't just say, there could be a why that really matters, but it's not enough to hold me to the thing that I need to do. So for me,
absolutely.
like when I know that, God gave me a vision and he showed me this, you know, um, then I'm kind of like, I'm standing, even when it hurts, even when, this doesn't feel right, or when I know that this is God's way of doing things or his standard, and it might not always be pleasant in his will. I might have some challenges, but I know that this is his will, and I could go back and pinpoint that this is what he showed me to prove that this was his will. I'm solid. That settles it for me.
Yeah.
So, and that's purpose. I love that. Okay, a final question as we end, and this is going to just be you talking to the audience. If you had 60 seconds to speak to a man who wants to strengthen his family but feels overwhelmed or unprepared, what would you tell him?
I would definitely tell that particular person that if you're trying to do this by yourself, you're destined to be in this kind of struggle with this mindset. Seek support and accountability from somebody who's further down the journey than you are, and allow them to speak into your situation. It's what I do on a regular basis, and I really believe that that's the key to how I got to where I am right now. So the accountability, I didn't try to stay in isolation, which makes me a clear mark for the enemy. I had to seek out support and accountability from people who have done what I'm trying to accomplish. Smartest decision I ever made.
That's another very powerful packed answer. That is very
Yeah,
good.
I got to
That
be
was
brief.
so
I'm sorry,
good.
but yeah, I'm sorry. I
No,
had
that
to be.
was so good. Because like I know some men that don't like counseling, but they don't understand how effective it is, right?
Yeah,
Um, and your answer kind of just hit all of that, right? Don't do it by yourself. I love it. Man, maybe in the future we can get you back on to
of
finish some of
course.
these questions
Anytime.
I have for men. And if you
Anytime.
guys got questions for him, you could drop it in the comment section. I'll be happy to pass it along and have him connect with you. But Yusuf, I want to thank you so much for giving me your time,
My
bringing
pleasure.
your expertise and wisdom to today's podcast, for shaping the foundation of our nation in terms of fatherhood and family. I think it's very very powerful and definitely much needed in this time.
Absolutely.
Hope to have you on again to expound on more of
Let's
this.
do it.
It's so
I'm ready.
good.
Let's do
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Okay, guys, y'all can join us or join me again on next Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. Stay locked. If you haven't already, you can hit the follow and subscribe button. Um, Yusef, you can find him at Mr. Yu. He is Mr. MistaUyu, correct?
you. Yeah.
And
Mistayu. Yeah.
he is on YouTube. He also has his own podcast as well, and he also has his own website too. I believe. Can you share that website with us?
It's too long. I had to put it in the show notes. It's a super
Okay,
long website. Yeah.
I can add it in the comment section for our show notes, guys,
Will
for
do.
everybody
Will
if
do.
you like to find more about his counseling and services and things that he offers and groups that he has to empower men as well. So yeah, Yusef, I want to thank you so much for being with me, for
My
sharing
pleasure. Thanks for
everything.
having me.
I love the authenticity you bring, and guys, I hope you guys are very blessed by this episode today.